Oh, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Lane County Wellness Corner. We're glad you're all tuned in. Let us know if just a quickie on we're on YouTube currently simulcasting, and if you would be so kind to give us a thumbs up and subscribe, you'll be notified on a weekly basis of who's next and who's up and the show. Anyway, we're glad you're here. The Lane County Wellness Corner is created in part by Lane County Wellness Consortium. It has been formed exclusively to bring dedicated professionals from all fields of the wellness together with a common goal: to increase and perpetuate opportunities to directly and indirectly serve Lane County, Oregon's community with qualified, innovative professionals dedicated to promoting healthy, centered mental and physical lifestyle for an ever-evolving landscape of the human wellness field. And we do this on a weekly basis with Lane County Wellness Corner. Is a podcast where we interview and chat with local Lane County wellness professionals. This 1 hour weekly show has several goals in mind: introducing you to local practitioners and organizations to learn more about their specialties and their services and what types of clients that they work with and serve. And most importantly, how long it takes to get an appointment. That is a critical issue right now in our particular county. The aspects of tongue-tied this morning. Our aspects of the consortium is the demands on services has never been so high. In many cases, clients can't get the help they need. So tune in and learn what you may not know about wellness and get the latest updates on finding the right professional and organizations for your needs. Today, we are blessed with a local service provider, founder and creator of EABT. I am so proud to introduce Doug Smith. 22 years of experience in working with behavioral health services, including as a director of clinical services, clinical director, and director of clinical development. He has a BS in psychology from Eastern Oregon University and is a certified alcohol and drug counselor, CADC 2. Doug has has innovated many modern approaches to treatment services, including development of new patient-centered treatment modalities. He is the developer of emotional attachment behavioral therapy, EABT, and speaks internationally as professionals in the field about the positive outcomes. Doug is the recipient of the Oregon Association of Addiction Professionals in 2023, Innovator Year Award as well in 2018, addiction professionals in the community. And he is a member of the Oregon NADAC board and serves as NADAC LGBTQ2A as community as also as a NADAC approved educator. So without further ado, let me get Doug out of the green room and bring him up. Doug, good morning, sir.
How's it going, Jed?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to be here with you today, and I'm really excited about the work you guys are doing. I think it's much needed. So happy to
Thank
be here with you.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, we we definitely have some missing links in Lane County, and we're hoping that this podcast and the efforts from the consortium will help bring about some services that have been overlooked. And believe it or not, we're receiving a lot of positive influence, especially from the LinkedIn crew, to do our show. So let's get started. Let me ask you, what originally drew you into the behavioral health field?
Yeah, so that is a long story and a short story all at the same time. First off, a lot of it has to do with lived experience. I have
Okay.
lived experience myself. I struggled with substance use disorder earlier on in my life, and this last July I celebrated 25 years clean and sober, which was huge. I got to
Right
say, I
on.
normally don't get really into my sobriety birthdays, but
Sure.
25 felt pretty big.
Yeah.
That felt like quite a milestone, and I definitely have a lot of gratitude. In some
Yeah.
ways, I feel like I did it in spite of myself. It's like it was all due to the people around me who
Yeah.
supported me and all of that stuff. But I think there was a point in my life where I started to get my life on track, and I started to look at people around me that were suffering and
Hmm.
struggling in
Hmm.
different areas. And the I kind of had the thought that if I could do something to prevent any of these individuals from having to go as far down the rabbit hole as I had to go
Sure.
down,
Sure.
that would be worth it. And that was kind of the initial part of my passion that made me want to get into helping people. I remember I had a conversation with my father at one point about what I was going to do with my life, and I was 28 years old, so that conversation should have probably happened a lot earlier than that. But that says something about where my life was at in the early parts of my life. But he said to me that you need to look at what qualities you have and where your experiences have been leading you towards.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
those two areas can help you identify what you're meant to do with your life. And
Wow.
I've always I've always been a pretty good people person. I've done lots of, different work with people in one form or another. And all my experiences were around my behavioral health and mental health struggles.
Sure.
And so being able to kind of put those together led me to join in an internship here in Lane County with Serenity Lane. Uh,
Oh, yeah.
and uh, and it was, and I remember early on in the internship, uh, one of the first days I was there with a lady who was one of my first mentors. Her name was Karen McGee, and
Mm.
she ran a group. And after the group, I said to her, "This is the best job I've ever had, and I'm not making a dime." And she said to me, "Remember that when you're making a paycheck." And
Yeah.
there was so many days down, over the course of my 22-year career where I was having a tough time and struggling with
Yep.
all the stresses that come in our industry. And I would
Sure.
think back on Karen's words and remember, that, hey, I love this stuff before I was even getting paid to do it. So
Yeah.
the other thing that I'll just mention briefly is
Wise words.
one of my big passions throughout my life has always been the concept of breaking cycles. My father's family struggled with behavioral health stuff and mental health stuff. My father struggled with it. He passed some of that down my direction, and I had difficulties with it. And I remember as I grew older and learned more about what my dad had been through as a kid and then what I went through as a kid, and how my dad was trying to do better for me than what
Sure.
was done for him.
Right.
And now I've got kids, and I want to do better for them than what was done, and I think that's every parent's wish, is to do a little bit better. The concept of breaking cycles was really important to me. And over the course of my career, in this field, those moments of those success stories can sometimes be few and far between.
Yeah.
And it's a
Right.
real grind, the work that we do.
Yeah.
But once a year, we would have a picnic at the organization I was at, and you would see clients or former clients show up at the picnic with their families. And
That's huge.
when I would see these clients with their wives and their kids, and especially I'd look at those little kids and think, we might have broke that cycle.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they may not get that passed down to them.
Yeah.
I have to say those were some of the best moments that would kind of feed me and fuel me for the next year's work in some ways. So
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense.
Well, it really does, and I totally understand, totally get it. It is a cycle that I've broken from my two children as well. Let me ask you specifically about EABT. What motivated you to develop emotional attachment behavioral therapy?
Yeah, first off, I didn't seek out to develop a therapy model. I kind of was complaining about things until people in my circle started being like, "Well, then do something about it," and so I kind of forced myself into it in some ways. But um, my feeling is that 20 years ago, when I first got into this field, I was a substance use disorder counselor at that point.
Right.
And 20 years ago, a lot of people might remember this, some people might not. But it used to be that mental health and substance use disorder didn't work so well. That we didn't play
Right.
together in the sandbox super
Yep.
well, right? And
Yep.
so I would, as a substance use disorder counselor, I would reach out to mental health therapists who were working with my clients, and it was difficult to be able to work together in some ways.
Mhm.
Like sometimes they wouldn't return your phone calls. And don't get me wrong, substance use disorder counselors were just as bad towards mental health as mental health could be. And then over the course of the last 10 years or 20 years, what I've seen is those two areas come
Merge,
together,
come
right? And they've
together. Yeah.
really come together in a way that's benefited the patient in such a huge way, right? And one of the big advantages that mental health and behavioral health coming together, working with clients, has been bringing stuff like motivational interviewing more into
Right.
the forefront when it comes to working with clients, and becoming more trauma informed. I think has been a huge
Oh,
what has
yeah.
happened through that point.
It's
To
a
be honest
huge
with you,
area.
I look back at some early points in my career, and we were not very trauma informed, and I'll speak
Yeah.
for myself.
Yeah. I agree.
I think about some of my interactions I had with clients early on in my career. And, I try not to beat myself up, because that's what we knew then and that's what we were doing. But it definitely was not as trauma informed as it is now.
Right.
And I definitely am glad we put safety and being trauma informed first. But the reason I bring this up is, I remember being at a training that a friend of mine was doing, and somebody asked him, "What do you think are the most common underlying areas for people struggling with behavioral health issues?" And
Uh,
without even batting an eye, he said trauma and attachment. And attachment has always been something I've been really fascinated by. I don't know if you've ever seen the Johann Hari TED Talk,
yeah.
where he
Yeah.
said the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's
Um,
connection. That's something that always just felt so true to me, and when I would work with clients, one thing I knew for sure is the better connection I had with clients, the higher their success rates would be. And
Right.
when I did group therapy, the better connection the clients had with the other clients in the group,
Clients in the
the
room.
higher
Yep.
their success rates would be, right? And
Yep.
it and my experience was, when I would go around and talk to other clinicians that worked in the field, all of us thought really highly of attachment theory, and we saw the correlations between attachment and some of these behavioral health and mental health issues. But where I started to kind of get frustrated at times is I thought to myself, man, I'm hearing all this stuff about trauma informed. There's all these trauma informed trainings. There's all these different workbooks that we have for clients with, CBT and
Right.
DBT,
Yep.
motivational interviewing. But I
Yep.
don't see anything around attachment. And yet we all know attachment is such a huge part of this. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of, mental health therapists out there doing amazing work with attachment, but it's not as accessible and readily available for clients as
Yep.
some of these other models are. And
Right.
that's what I started to complain to my circle about. And they said, well, then do something about it. And I said, well, I can't do anything about it. And they
Yeah.
were like, why
Well,
not? And I was like,
yeah.
I don't have enough letters after my last name to do anything about it, And I think I struggle with imposter syndrome a little bit and feel like,
Sure. Sure.
that
I
I'm
don't
not.
think that's unusual for anyone.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
Yeah. And so thankfully I had people around me encouraging me, saying, who better to do this than somebody with all the years of experience in the field that you have? And
Right.
so that gave me the motivation, and I put the model together, and I never expected it to kind of become as popular as it became. The next thing you know, I'm going around the state of Oregon, speaking at conferences, and then I'm speaking at national conferences. Now I'm
And
speaking
now
international.
international. Yeah.
It's just been kind of a roller coaster. I don't know about you, Jed, but when I create something, there can be some insecurity about, is this even are people even gonna like this?
Yeah.
And it's been a whirlwind, the type of reception that it's had, which has been really cool.
Well, I remember when I took the test or exam or whatever when we first met.
Yeah.
I was quite astonished at the results. So, how does it work in really simple terms? Can
Yeah.
you give
So
a EABT?
Yeah. So in simple terms, when it comes to attachment is how we connect with other human beings. And what we've learned is that how we connect with people in our present lives has a lot to do with the connections we had early on in our lives, right?
Right.
And this
Yeah.
is some of the stuff that was talked about by some of the earliest attachment theorists, John Bowlby, and so on and so forth. So, for instance, the type of connection I had with my mom and my dad growing up,
Right.
that has an impact on my marriage with my wife and my relationship with my kids. So a lot of times when my wife's having to deal with challenges of being married to me, that can be like dealing with some of those attachment issues that come up for
Sure.
us.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's been shown through research is that these some of these unhealthy ways that we form connections can lead us to developing behavioral health and mental health issues. And
Right.
and what these unhealthy ways of forming connections are called is insecure attachment styles.
Mhm.
So what EABT does in simple terms, it helps us understand our insecure attachments, how those can lead us towards unhealthy outcomes in our life, and
Right.
how to intervene on those cycles to stop it from leading to those unhealthy outcomes, while at the same time trying to build healthier connections in our life, so that we can not only prevent unhealthy outcomes, but increase the likelihood of
Like
healthy
that.
outcomes as we move
Sure.
forward.
So how does this differ from other uh, models of therapy?
Yeah, I think, first off, I always have difficulty with this question, and I'll tell you why. I have personally, over the course of my career, watched CBT, DBT,
That.
motivational
Yep.
interviewing,
Yep.
help so many clients. And so I just want to say, like, I think the world of those models, and I'm so grateful that that I've gotten to see them help as many clients
Well,
as they have.
we've all cut our teeth on those. Those
Exactly,
are that's the foundation of what we do.
exactly. But I will tell you, one of my frustrations at times in this field was I felt like we were treating the symptoms of the problems and
Correct.
not necessarily getting to the roots of the problems, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
it felt at times, especially like in substance use disorder treatment, where I spent a lot of my career, it felt at times like we were just focused on the behavioral responses that came from our substance use, right?
Right. Right.
And at times it felt like we were trimming the top of a weed off and hoping that the weed goes away, right? And the reality is, like, if you don't pull a weed out by
It,
its root, it's
it,
just going to grow right
it's going
back.
to come. It's going to come right back.
And I would see these clients come in and out of treatment constantly and be in treatment 5, 6, 7 times, you know, and so that was part of my areas of concern is I wanted something that really got down to the root causes that play into the development of some of these issues to begin with. And I want to make clear, like, I absolutely believe things like substance use disorder are a disease and there's a genetic component.
Yep.
But there's no question that there's a nature side of it and there's a nurture side of it.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
and I felt at times like we weren't really getting down to the root causes, that nurture side that played into it. And I also wanted to develop something that was trauma informed so that we could get into some of those root areas without re-triggering somebody's past trauma experiences and things along those lines. So, you know, getting to the roots was a big part of how I wanted this to be different than other models. I
Sure.
also wanted something that primarily focused on building those connections. So the way that Johann Hari said the opposite of
Right.
addiction is
Addiction.
connection,
Addiction.
I wanted a
Right.
model that put on the very forefront creating healthy connections with our clients, you know, because like I said, at times I feel like I sacrificed those connections through some of the work that I was doing with clients. And what I mean by that is, you know, challenging them on things like denial and unhealthy behaviors and things like
Sure.
that.
Yeah. Right.
You can end up risking the safety in the therapeutic alliance. And so I really wanted something that put those connections first. The other ways that I think this model is different from some of those models is one of the things I've seen over the course of my career is 20 years ago when a client would seek out a helping professional to work with,
Right.
they quite often would want the counselor to lead the treatment experience, right? They would want,
Right.
excuse me, they would want the counselor in the driver's seat and they would want to ride in the passenger seat. And they were fine with the counselor telling them what the problems were,
Sure.
creating a treatment plan, helping
Yep.
guide that experience.
Yep.
Well, over the course of the last 20 years, clients' trust in authority figures, large institutions, things like that has really declined. And so
Yep.
what I've seen change is nowadays clients don't feel comfortable riding in the passenger seat. They want to ride in the driver's seat. They want to be in charge of their own experience and have autonomy in that regard, right? And
Yeah.
they want a counselor who can ride shotgun with them in the passenger seat and be there as a supportive person, but they're leading the way. And so with this model, they identify what areas they want to work on.
Okay.
They're the ones that looks at, you know, what areas they need to strengthen. They're the ones that creates the plan on how to strengthen that stuff. And from a clinical standpoint, we approach them much more with the motivational interviewing type of approach, where
Right.
we're there to assist guiding them in them finding their own answers, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And a perfect segue into my next question is what kind of outcomes are you seeing right now in EABT?
Yeah. So, you know, what we're seeing so far, and I want to be very clear on this, EABT is still early on in the research stages,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
It's not evidence-based yet. It's
Yep.
currently evidence-informed, but we have done some early pilot studies around it. And what we have seen through some of the early research is the levels of engagement and retention with this model
Okay.
are much higher
Much
than they
higher.
are with some of the other models, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that is because clients come into the work with clinicians valuing safety first and foremost with them. So that safe environment makes it really easy for clients to engage into the treatment process. We're not
Sure.
labeling them. We're not pointing out what they need to work on, any of that. We're just creating a safe container that they can do this work in. And then the other piece is, I think, as clients get down to some of these root issues and start to look at what's played into some of this,
Right.
one of the things I've heard at times is clients say, I just want to understand the why better.
Wow.
Why did
Yeah.
this happen? And what clients will tell me is
Oh,
they'll say in some of their previous treatment experiences, when they would ask the why question, they would almost get shamed for asking that question,
exactly.
right?
Exactly.
And they, some of the things that have felt the nicest hearing from clients is, I've always wanted to know the why question. This model finally answered that why question for me,
This, I think that was the single most difficult feeling, emotion, action, and question that I had in my early days of recovery. And you're right, it was the shaming question. And I think that was the most difficult thing that I had to deal with, because that is important. It is
Absolutely.
critically important. So with that, let's take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Sure.
Lifestyles Renewed is a place where you can find a safe and welcoming place to begin to heal and create a life where suffering is not the regular path, but rather where you can learn to manage your life in a healthy way. Lifestyles Renewed will offer hope and help you regain control over your life. Please don't hesitate to call. Your first consultation is the most important meeting, and it is at no cost to you. Just call 541-954-1268. Again, 541-954-1268. Thank you, and we look forward to meeting you.
Okay, you're back with Doug Smith and the conversation about EABT. Doug, this is amazing. I am blessed to have you. Uh, we aren't even halfway through all the questions that I had for you, but and that's okay, because this is an ongoing conversation, and if the audience still hasn't gotten enough, we can bring you back for a second show. Um, can you share some real world examples or success stories so far, even though the model isn't completely yeah, anyway, can you share some positive
Yes.
things?
So one thing I'll mention really quick from the previous question around outcomes and early results. One of the areas that we've seen a lot of positive results is with people with a history of trauma. And like I had mentioned before, wanting this model to be very trauma informed. So being able
Right.
to work on these root issues, but in a safe way, is
Right.
extremely important. And we're seeing really positive outcomes when it comes to that. In terms of like real world examples, obviously I can't say anything that's a client identifying or anything like that.
Sure,
But
of course.
I
Of
will
course.
say this. I will say this. I hear from a lot of clients that when they leave treatment, they feel more hopeful that they can develop good connections
Oh,
in their
wow.
life because of the connections they developed while working with this model, right? And
Yeah,
so
right.
that part is really exciting to me. And I hear from clients around how in some ways they felt like the first secure connection they've had their entire life while they were working and using this model. And that's obviously heartbreaking on one hand, but it's really
Sure.
rewarding because that's what we're trying to create here. I'll also mention we work, I'm sure later on I'll mention some stuff about some different forms of EABT, but we work with adolescents around the country as well as adults. And some of the organizations that work with adolescents that have been using EABT, we will be doing EABT with the adolescents while we're also doing EABT for parents with the parents connected to these adolescents. So we'll be working with both sides at once.
Oh,
And
wow. Yeah.
I'll comments from the families about how it's changing their family systems. And that goes back to that breaking the cycle thing that you and I were talking
Right.
about, which
Yeah.
is
Right.
super cool. And then the last real world example that I'll mention is, attachment is such a foundational model that it applies to a ton of different areas. So I always have people coming to me saying, have you ever thought about EABT for such and such? And
Right.
one that came about was an attachment focused approach to looking at burnout within helping professionals, that our rate of burnout is so high.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
a lot of the research shows that insecure attachment correlates really highly with burnout, right? So one of the trainings I do now is I go around and do a burnout training for people who work in the field with helping professionals. And I have to say, Jed, every time I just did one of these trainings last week up in Portland, and every time I do these trainings, in this training, they like do their own work, gaining awareness around themselves. And then they get into these small groups and share with each other what they're working on.
Right.
And at every one of these trainings, I sit back and I watch this room of helping professionals talking to each other about stuff we don't talk about enough.
Yeah.
And that feels so rewarding to kind of like feel like we're creating a safe container, not only for the clients, but for the professionals that are doing this work at the same time.
Well, the reality is, I can only speak for myself. I have my own therapist, as well. Yeah. And it's critical to be able to have an outlet to release. Otherwise, the burnout is real. You see that I just digress just for a second. A Reiki master needs to release that energy once they take that energy from you. So what types of professionals and professions are currently using EABT?
Yeah. So, all sorts of mental health professionals, whether it be therapists, social workers, are using EABT in different forms. EABT is being used one-on-one in individual therapy for things like trauma, other mental health conditions, behavioral health conditions. There's also counselors around the country using it, like substance use disorder counselors and different counselors connected to different behavioral health areas. Peer support professionals are using this model, which is really neat. And then we've also done some work with teachers and school systems, utilizing some of this model. So one of the things that's super exciting with some of this work is how it could possibly be helpful in terms of prevention as well. Not just treating the problem.
Oh, interesting. Sure.
Starting to get out in front of some of this stuff. I know I've heard people say before that some of these health epidemics that we're dealing with mental health and behavioral health, that treatment alone won't fix the problem. It's going to take prevention and treatment together. So it's cool to see it having that kind of an impact as well.
Yeah, I just pulled up the website. If you want more information about what Doug's talking about, it's learn EABT.com. And it's quite a fascinating site. The very first part at the top of the page is take the quiz. And I highly recommend that you do that. Non-invasive, just take that quiz and you'll be utterly surprised at the results. I know I was when I did it. So,
and Jed, can I give a quick shout out while we're at it? Speaking
definitely.
of Lane County, a local company did my website for me. So if you look at the website and you like how it looks, reach out to Northwest Brand Design. They do great.
Oh, yes.
They helped. They helped with my website, and they've been a huge supporter of my work. So I appreciate them a ton.
Yeah. I had a conversation with them when we were looking at building our site. So it's a great organization.
Yeah, they're good people.
Yeah. So what EABT? I know it's categorized in many different categories, and I think the workbooks, the resources that you have are currently available now that we're on the site. Can you kind of list the categories that each workbook addresses?
Yeah. So, when I first developed EABT, it was mostly focused on substance use disorder treatment
Right.
because that's where my career was at that point. As I started to go around and present it at different places, almost every presentation I would do at a conference, I'd have people walk up to me afterwards and say, why is it just for this? Why not this population as well, or that population as well? And so I constantly was looking at how to create more material that spoke directly to populations. I'll tell you, one of my frustrations in our field is I feel like as an industry at times, my experience, and this isn't everybody's experience, but it was mine, I felt like we talked about patient-centered care and individualized care. And at times we talked the talk more than we walked the
Yeah.
walk,
Agreed.
and it
I
felt
agree.
very cookie cutter to me at times. And that was a frustration of mine. Anytime I found myself having to explain to a patient how to translate the material to themselves,
Right.
that doesn't feel right. Like, how are we making these people feel valued and safe when the first thing we're asking them to do is translate what we have for them to fit for them,
Yeah.
And so one of my goals with this model was to constantly be doing work to individualize it. And so there's an adult workbook that was the first workbook we ever did with EABT.
Right.
There's an adolescent workbook. One of the first conferences I spoke at, I had somebody come up to me who worked with adolescents and asked if I could start doing some work with them. I'll give a shout out to Harmony Academy up in Portland. They're a recovery high school up in the Portland area, and their principal, Sharon Dursey Martin, walked up to me and we started working together, and that led to some of that work. And then, we also did workbooks around LGBTQ IA2S plus, and that's a community that's really near and dear to my heart. I don't mind sharing that my oldest kiddo is transgender, and so it's something that is extremely important to me. I'm also part of NADAC's LGBTQ plus committee, where we look at how to improve services around the country. And obviously we could have a whole show in and of itself on the difficulties that population is going through right now.
Most definitely. And those are on our schedule to have as, guests in our next couple shows. I will just kind of quick promo. We are, our guest next week is Chrissy Overvad, a senior director from program Youth Era. They're local here in town. And so she'll be with us to talk about the adolescent and how underserved that population is. So, So,
that's great. And then, and then other resources, we ended up doing one for peer support. I had peer support providers come up to me and say, hey, we're the fastest growing segment of the professional staffing currently, but there's not a lot of tools that we're given to help us work. And so we created a workbook that was specific for peer support providers to be using. There's a parenting workbook that we've created where people look at their parenting styles, how they correlate with their attachment styles. There's a couples workbook. Like I said before, I ended up developing a helping professionals workbook that focuses on burnout. And then we just recently completed we took our adult workbook and translated it into Spanish, which was super exciting.
Cool. Awesome.
Because there's such a shortage of services in that regard. So we're excited to be having some of our material in Spanish now. And we're just finishing a workbook right now on problematic sexual behavior as well, which is much needed. And a lot of the individuals working in those areas, they can feel shamed by some of the old school material that's out there for them to work on it. And this is much more of a safe environment for them to be able to do that work. And then, like I mentioned before, Jed, there's probably 5 or 10 workbooks that
are still waiting to be developed,
which is exciting. I love doing that stuff. So it's really cool.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. Well, I was just going to ask about other resources, but let's talk about the trainings and certifications.
Yeah.
You provide, I do know you provide a certification, and you're doing this training all around the country.
Yeah.
So what does that look like?
Yeah, so I do, organizations that want all of their counselors to be trained in this model. I will go in and do group trainings for organizations.
Right.
I also do individual practitioner trainings for individual practitioners that want to learn this model and start using it with clients. We do peer support trainings for peer support professionals that are wanting to become certified to be able to use this material. And then, like I said before, I do an ethics and action training,
Yeah.
which is the burnout one that we
Right.
do
Yeah.
with helping professionals looking at their levels of burnout, self-care, professional boundaries, all of that sort of stuff. So
Yeah.
those are the main trainings that I'm doing currently. And then when people are certified to use EABT, then they get access to all of the different workbooks. So they have
Right.
access to the entire library so that they can use any of the workbooks to work with the clients that they're working with.
And do you see that it growing and engulfing in other areas as well?
What do you mean by other areas?
Well, the development of the certifications, are we looking at certifying a youth who runs a support group or something like that?
Yeah, I think options like that are definitely open
Okay.
as we move forward. It's interesting. I'm learning a lot about being a business owner at the same time as
Yeah.
I'm developing all this stuff, right? And so one of the things, I've got a tendency at times to get easily distracted by the next shiny thing that comes
Yep.
around.
Right.
And
Yep.
occasionally
Me
people
too.
yeah, occasionally people that are closest to me have to remind me to kind of like stay focused on what's working and build on that at times. So
Yeah.
to answer your question, yeah, I'm very open to new options that are coming up, and I'm trying at the same time to stay focused so I don't drive the
Sure.
people around me too nuts.
So what we've got a couple more questions here. What is one of the attachment-based tools or insight that listeners can apply right here, right now?
Yeah. If you go to my website, which like you had mentioned before is learneabt.com.
Yep.
If you go to that website, as soon as you open up the website, you're going to see take the attachment quiz here.
Do it. Take it.
I would encourage you to take the attachment style quiz. And, most people, when they take the attachment style quiz, what they're really interested in is finding out which attachment styles they're the most prone towards. But in my opinion, the best information on that is at the bottom of the results of the attachment style quiz. It shows you, which insecure attachment characteristics you're the most prone towards.
Right.
And if you want an easy tool that you can do to see kind of the benefit of this model, take that quiz, and when it lists out your insecure attachment characteristics, ask yourself, which one of these do I see show up the most in my life?
Right.
And then ask yourself questions like, how does this negatively impact the relationships in my life? How does this negatively impact my physical health, my emotional health, my mental health? How does this negatively impact my self-esteem, or different, for people with behavioral health issues, maybe how does it impact my substance use or my recovery? Also, when these characteristics come up for us, how do we respond to them in unhealthy ways at times? How can we learn to respond to them in healthier ways?
Right.
If you sit down and start to look at that, you're going to see the rabbit hole that you can go down that gives you a lot of information about yourself
Yeah.
and how this can create problems for you in your life. That's an easy way to kind of look at the power of this model,
Yeah.
where you can really see, why doing some of this attachment work can be so helpful.
Well, when I took the test back when I connected with you on LinkedIn, I
Yeah.
immediately took that test, and I was just totally amazed at the information I got from it. So we're going to be right back. We're going to take one more commercial break before the end of the show, and we'll be back in a second.
Lifestyles Renewed is a place where you can find a safe and welcoming place to begin to heal and create a life where suffering is not the regular path, but rather where you can learn to manage your life in a healthy way. Lifestyles Renewed will offer hope and help you regain control over your life. Please don't hesitate to call. Your first consultation is the most important meeting, and it is at no cost to you. Just call 541-954-1268. Again, 541-954-1268. Thank you, and we look forward to meeting you.
Well, we're back with Doug Smith talking about EABT. And Doug, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come on the show. It really it is an amazing opportunity for our listeners to find out that there are, other modalities out there that are growing and changing. And so with that in mind, where do you see EABT taking you? What's the future look like? Oh, I forgot to bring him back in. Hang on. I turned off his mic.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
my bad.
No worries. No worries. Yeah, it's exciting to think about where some of this can go in the future. I think first and foremost, we're about 2 years or so away from it becoming evidence-based, hopefully. And so that's
Okay.
an exciting thing that we're moving towards. And obviously, while making it evidence-based, we're going to be learning how to make it more effective at the same time, which is really exciting. Anything, I'm a big believer in progress, not perfection. So anything that we could be doing to improve the model and make it more effective is really exciting to me. And then I think in terms of other things for the future, my hope is better long-term outcomes. By dealing with some of these root issues, we start seeing better long-term outcomes. I also am really hopeful that we start to see how much models like this can be used for prevention increase. My experience is that that research has clearly shown that we can assess which adolescents are most likely to develop behavioral health and mental health issues, and we've got some idea on how to treat them to minimize that risk factor.
Sure. Yeah, right.
The problem is, as a society, we tend to not be super open to our kids being asked to do this type of work if we don't see that they absolutely need it, and right. If you go into high schools and you start or middle schools and you start asking all the students to work on their attachment issues, parents are probably going to freak out by it, right?
Yeah.
But if you go
unfortunately,
but if you go to a high school or an adolescent program where people have struggled with substance use disorder, the parents are more than willing for them to do whatever work they need to. So how can we start to change as a society where we're willing to do some of this work ahead of time to prevent some of this from occurring? I think that's, an exciting proposition that we can continue to work on. Obviously, I'm super passionate about creating more workbooks and working with different populations and creating workbooks for those populations. So that's something that I'm extremely excited about. There's been conversations about how to develop electronic versions for EABT, how to make a web-based version or an app version, which, on one hand, I know some clinicians and therapists don't really like some of the electronic, work that can be done. At the same time, it really increases accessibility for people. So that part is exciting. And then, in terms of the future, I just want to circle back to the breaking cycles thing again, too. To me, what's super exciting with this work is watching people identify those cycles and start to do work to break them. And so I'm hopeful that as we move into the future, we'll see more models that are getting down to root causes and really starting to disrupt these cycles that just keep, recycling from generation to generation.
Yeah. One last question, and this wasn't on the script.
Yeah.
Is the population of our incarceration?
Yeah.
Is this model one of those that could develop into the programs that we see for our incarceration souls, both at the youthful side at, like at Surbu, or at, at the state pen and so forth.
Yeah, so there has been people who I have have been in contact with who've reached
Oh,
out to
good.
me, who are interested in using it in some of those environments, and once again, I had mentioned this with problematic sexual behaviors before, but I'll mention it with this population as well. Some of the old therapeutic models that they're using can be really shame-based in a lot of
Yep.
ways. And
Yep.
having a model that creates safety in the work that they're doing with these guys could be really game changing. At the same time, there's some resistance at times about making some of those changes in some of those systems. And so, it's an area I'm super interested in, and I would very much like to continue to work to become a part of that for sure.
I know. I spent some time at working as a volunteer at sponsors here locally, and I got to tell you, um, I have a real passion for that population.
Yeah.
And talk about the trauma that has been part of that population's life from the day they were born.
Yeah.
It was, sadly enough, a given that that's where they were headed,
Yep.
because their parents were there, their grandparents were there, and their great grandparents were there. And I just, that population is also underserved, in my opinion, in a lot of ways, especially when they receive the release notice that they can go back out into society, but they don't have the skill set to continue to stay clean and stay, out of trouble and stay out of prison. So,
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
yeah. Doug, I can't begin to thank you enough for spending the last hour with us.
Thanks for
Thank you.
having me.
Yeah. Thanks so much. And guess what? We're going to have you back. We'll give it some time. Let some of that evidence base pop up
Yep.
so we can have a different discussion.
I would love it. I'd be happy to come back at any point. Thanks, Jed. And thanks again for the work you guys are doing. I think it's really exciting.
Yeah, I'm real happy with it. Thank you, Doug.
All right.
We'll talk to you soon. Okay, what a great show. Let me give you an update for next week's show. I was just, again, down there on the ticker. If you want to get a hold of Doug, you go ahead and he will jump right to making a connection with you. And let me give you a little update for next week. Let me see, where's my stuff? Here we go. There's Chrissy's stuff. We're going to have Chrissy, and you know what? I'm probably going to bastardize this last name, and I'm sorry if I do. She'll correct me, I'm sure. Override. Oh, yeah. Yerdevides is Oyervider She is the senior director of programs at Youth Era, a nonprofit organization supporting young people across Oregon. As she's local here in Eugene, and we're going to have her as a guest next week. So tune in, and I'm glad you tuned in today, and I hope you learned something and got the information you need. If you need to contact us, definitely get a hold of us. Well, let me put that back on. And if you'd like to be on the show, just get in contact with us at support@laneCountyWellness.com, or you can call direct 541-954-1268. And we're so glad that you tuned in. And here we go. Let's do this. There we go. All right. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much for spending this last hour with us.